On the way to my mother-in-law's house, I asked my husband to stop at a store nearby to buy her a cake. But suddenly, the cashier grabbed my hand and told me something. So I left the store and decided to watch him. And 15 minutes later, before we begin, tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. I'd love to know how far my story has traveled. Now get ready. She never thought the most dangerous place wasn't the street, but the passenger seat next to the man she slept with. Roberta was 36, a police officer, a mother to an 8-year-old, and a wife of a decade. Her story was no different from many women who love, who endure, who believe, until their bodies start to speak, until their silent souls plead to run away. That morning, she dressed simply. Jeans, a white t-shirt, and a jacket she always wore when they went to her mother-in-law's house. It wasn't because of the weather, it was because of the discomfort. Her mother-in-law never liked her. She said Roberta was from a different class, as if social classes had anything to do with dignity. "Can you stop at the store?" she asked as she fastened her seatbelt in the passenger seat. Andrew nodded without even looking at her. He was chewing gum and checking his phone. In the back seat, Matthias was fast asleep, his head resting against the window. It had been a long week at school. "I want to get a cake. I don't want your mom to say we came empty-handed," she said. "Sure," Andrew replied almost automatically. "That corner store is fine." Roberta watched him for a few seconds. There was something different in his tone. Something flat. She didn't give it much thought. Andrew always had those days when he was more distant. She attributed it to work, stress, or that dry way he used to justify his coldness. The store was right on a corner in a residential neighborhood. Fluorescent lights, worn shelves, handwritten signs with a black marker. A small store, but one of those that always has exactly what you need. Roberta walked in with a determined step. Her eyes scanned the shelves as she moved towards the bakery section. She spotted a simple cake decorated with strawberries, perfect for the occasion. Just as she was about to pick it up, she felt a firm hand grab her wrist. It wasn't a casual gesture. It was urgent, tense, human. "Don't get in that car. Don't turn around. Listen to me, your husband wants you dead." "I saw it. I saw blood." Roberta turned. The woman behind the counter had a pale face, sunken eyes, and a blurred tattoo on her neck. Her name was Lucy, a cashier with the look of someone who has lived things no one should ever see. "I'm sorry," Roberta asked, trying to pull away without making a scene. "Who are you?" Lucy held on for a few more seconds. Her voice dropped, but it didn't lose its urgency. "I saw him with another woman a month ago, but that's not the real issue. They're cops just like you, but not like you. They're planning something. You're the obstacle." Roberta froze. The cake trembled in her hands. The glass door of the store opened, and a distracted customer walked in. Lucy let go of her, her face changing immediately. She smiled as if nothing had happened. "That cake is 11.50. Roberta paid, not saying another word. Her legs carried her towards the exit as if they no longer belonged to her. The sun outside seemed hostile. It was hard to breathe. She swallowed with difficulty as she walked towards the car. She didn't get in right away. She stood by the door, pretending to look for something in her purse. She pulled out her phone, activated the camera, and set it to record in the background. She turned around. Andrew was still in the car, but something caught her attention. The back door of the store opened, and a woman appeared, walking towards the counter. Brown hair, police uniform. Medium height. Roberta felt time stop. That face. She had seen that face 2 weeks ago by mistake in a photo on Andrew's phone when he left it unlocked on the dining table. The image disappeared when she tried to get closer, and he, with calculated calmness, told her it was a training partner. The same woman was now inside the store. She was talking to Lucy, smiling. Lucy, on the other hand, did not return the smile. She glanced sideways towards where Roberta was. She was looking at her as if to say, "Without words, you see? I'm not lying." Roberta opened the car door, got in, and placed the cake on her lap. "Everything okay?" Andrew asked as he turned to her. "Yes, I just got a call from work. It seems there was a mix-up with a transfer order. I need us to go home." Andrew watched her for a few seconds. "What about my mom? We can stop by later. It'll be quick." Andrew clenched his jaw, started the engine without saying more. In the rearview mirror, Matthias was still asleep. Roberta looked out the window, but her mind wasn't there. She remembered every word. "Your husband wants you dead." She didn't say, "He's going to leave you." She didn't say, "He's cheating on you." She said, "He wants to take your life." That phrase hammered at her chest, growing louder and louder. The rest of the drive was silent. She activated the phone's voice recorder. Just in case. She needed proof, even if she didn't know what of yet. "You're acting weird," Andrew said without turning. "What did the cashier say to you?" Roberta felt her blood run cold. He never asked those kinds of things. He never showed interest in details like that. "Nothing, she just charged me for the cake." Andrew smiled, but not naturally. There was something in that smile that reminded her of an expression he only used when he was lying to others. A mixture of contempt and satisfaction. They got home. Roberta got out first. She asked Andrew to stay in the car with Matthias, who was still asleep. She went up the stairs and entered. She closed the door. She leaned her back against it. Only then did she let out the air she had been holding. The house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that isn't peace but a warning. She turned on her laptop, inserted an external memory card, and copied the recording from her phone. She wanted to save every word. Something inside her, instinct, intuition, desperation, told her she was running out of time, that something was approaching, something much darker than she imagined. The doorbell rang. It was Andrew with Matthias, now awake. "Mom, my head hurts," the boy said as he walked in. Roberta hugged him. "It must be the heat. Come on, let's get some water." Andrew watched her from the kitchen, silent, as if waiting for something, as if measuring her movements. When night fell, Roberta locked herself in the bathroom with her phone and played the recording. She listened to Lucy's voice over and over again, taking notes, repeating the phrase in her mind like a poisonous mantra. "They're cops just like you, but not like you." In the early hours of the morning, while everyone was sleeping, she searched social media. She typed the name Sabrina Cortez. She found the woman from the store in a group photo in uniform, smiling. Next to her, Andrew, with his hand on his hip, as if he had nothing to hide. In that instant, something changed in Roberta. It wasn't just betrayal, it wasn't just deceit. It was real, palpable danger. The adrenaline told her she could no longer trust, sleep, or ignore. She went back to the kitchen, checked the dinner. The poison could be anywhere. For days, she'd had a metallic taste in her mouth. Dizziness, headaches. She thought it was stress. Maybe it wasn't. She opened the fridge, looked at the food, and thought about everything Andrew had served her with so much courtesy lately. The nightly tea, the orange juice, the morning coffee. She rested her hands on the counter, closed her eyes. She felt the floor move, but it wasn't dizziness. It was fear, raw, uncomfortable, sharp as a blade. A noise startled her. It was Andrew. "What are you doing up?" Roberta turned. "I couldn't sleep. I just got a glass of water." Andrew looked at her with a neutral expression. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Yes, just worried about work." "I'm going to bed." "Aren't you going to take your pill?" Roberta felt a cold current run down her spine. She hadn't been taking any medication for months. "Oh yes, I forgot. Thanks for reminding me," she replied, feigning normalcy. She went up the stairs without looking back. She closed her bedroom door. She sat on the bed feeling nauseous, not from poison, not from tiredness, but from the truth, from the certainty. She had to act, but she didn't know how or whom to trust. She knew that the woman in the store, Lucy, was her only lead, and that she had to go back to find her tomorrow. Before sleeping, she wrote a sentence in her notebook, one she repeated with a trembling but determined voice. "If I die, it was not an accident, and my son must live." She turned off the light. The darkness was denser than ever, and the story was just beginning. The night brought no rest. Roberta lay in bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening to every sound in the house. The creak of the old stairs. The distant hum of the refrigerator. The low whisper of Andrew's breathing beside her, constant, foreign, as if nothing in the world were out of place. The silence was a trap. She had learned it too late. Dawn arrived with a gray tone. Outside, the rain fell as if the sky was trying to wash away some footprints. Roberta got up without a sound, walked to the bathroom, closed the door carefully, and turned on the water. She let it run. She didn't shower. She just sat on the cold ceramic floor, hugging her legs, trying to control the trembling that invaded her from within. She was tired, not from a night without sleep, but from years of pretending everything was okay. A memory hit her hard. She saw herself, sitting in front of a letter. She was young, with longer hair, her eyes full of hope. It was the acceptance letter from a state university. They offered her a full scholarship to study criminology. It had been her dream since she was a child. Receiving that letter had been a victory, a beacon in the midst of the chaos that had been her adolescence. But Andrew didn't celebrate. He just raised an eyebrow as he looked at the letter over her shoulder. "So what does that mean?" "That you're leaving." he asked in that low voice he used when he felt threatened. It means I made it. I'm going to study criminology, Andrew. It's what I've always wanted. And what about me? And us? What if we have kids? Are you going to be running after killers while I take care of the children? She laughed, not understanding that he was serious. We can make it work. It's a scholarship. I don't have to move far. He didn't respond. He just left the letter on the table, walked to the door, and closed it with a dry thud. He didn't come home for 2 days. The scholarship was lost. She was brought back to the present by Matthias's voice in the hallway. He was awake. He was talking to Andrew. She couldn't make out the words, but she recognized the tone. The boy was trying hard to sound enthusiastic, even though his voice betrayed that he didn't feel well. Another headache. Roberta came out of the bathroom with a wet face. She found Matthias in the kitchen, sitting at the table with his head in his arms. What's wrong, my love? It hurts here, the boy said, pointing to his forehead. I don't want to go to school today. Andrew appeared behind him with a cup of coffee in his hand. He wants to stay home and watch movies with you. Look how he manipulates you. Roberta looked at him. Something in his expression, in that twisted smile, made her stomach churn. I'm taking him to the doctor, she said without asking. What for? He intervened. It's just tiredness. You give him too much screen time, it's affecting him. You're spoiling him too much. I want a professional to see him, she repeated without changing her tone. Do what you want, Andrew said, taking a long sip of his coffee. You always do what you want. Roberta bent down to hug her son. She felt him thinner, more fragile, as if something invisible was draining his energy. Come on, my love, let's go, just you and me. The day was long. At the clinic, the pediatrician told her it was a childhood migraine. He prescribed a syrup and rest. Roberta didn't mention the poisoning. She couldn't. Not without proof. They returned home before noon. Andrew wasn't there. He had left a note on the fridge. Headed to the precinct. Don't wait up. Roberta stood in front of that note for several seconds. Her mind began to work. She had a few hours alone. She decided to act. She went up to Andrew's room, opened his closet, rummaged through his shirts, and found a metal box locked with a padlock. She forced the lock with a hairpin. Inside were folders, documents, and a photo. The photo paralyzed her. It was her asleep on the sofa. Someone had taken it from the outside window from the garden. She felt a chill on the back of her neck. She took photos with her phone, put everything back as it was, and went downstairs. On the floor, next to the door, there was something new, a folded paper. She picked it up carefully. A handwritten note. You're not the first, but you could be the last. Watch your food. She felt a knot in her chest. She immediately turned around looking for hidden cameras, microphones, anything. Nothing in plain sight. She took the note and burned it in the sink. She couldn't risk it. She spent the rest of the afternoon watching her son, noting everything. What did he eat? How did he react? Nothing seemed casual. Now every gesture, every silence was loaded with another meaning. When Andrew returned, Roberta was already in automatic mode. She cooked, cleaned, smiled, pretended. During dinner, he watched her more than usual. Aren't you going to eat? He asked. My stomach is upset. Just tea for now. Andrew lowered his gaze but didn't insist. She noticed him moving his foot under the table. An old sign. He did it when he was lying or when he was planning something. That night, Roberta pretended to sleep. When she heard Andrew's snores, she got up and went to Matthias's room. She hugged him, touched his forehead. He was still a little warm. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She didn't have time for weaknesses. She went back to her room, took her phone, opened the recorder and started talking. My name is Roberta Mendez. This recording is to document everything that is happening. I am in danger. My husband plans to harm me. I have discovered it, and I am not crazy. I am more aware than ever. If something happens to me, it was not an accident. She paused, took a breath, and continued recording. Today I found a photo of me sleeping. Someone took it from outside. I also received a note. They say I'm not the first. I don't know how many others he did this to before me. I don't know if they are still alive, but I am going to find out. She saved the audio to a secure, password-protected cloud. Then she went to bed. On the outside, she was motionless. On the inside, a storm was tearing everything apart. The next morning, she went back to the store. She left Matthias with her trusted neighbor, saying she had a doctor's appointment. She didn't want to expose him. The store was the same, worn lights, few customers. Lucy was at the register. She recognized her immediately. "I need to talk to you," Roberta said without beating around the bush. Lucy nodded without surprise. "Come to the back. There are cameras. They can't record there." She followed her between shelves and boxes to a small side door that led to a narrow corridor. Lucy locked the door. Roberta felt the air grow denser. "What else do you know?" Lucy rested her hands on the old desk that served as an improvised office. "I don't have physical proof, just what I saw. I'm not just a cashier. I have a gift. Sometimes I see things. I don't always understand everything, but with your husband, I saw it clearly. It was a month ago. He and the other woman came here. She bought a bottle of wine. He paid. They were laughing. They looked like a couple, but there was something else." "What?" "And he was on the phone. He thought I wasn't listening. He said, 'It won't be long now, she just needs to take enough for it to look natural. No one will suspect a depressed officer.'" Roberta felt her stomach empty. She clenched her fists. "And you didn't go to the police?" Lucy looked at her with wide eyes. "Do you know how many times I went to the police before for other things? And how many times they told me to be quiet? I lived with a man for 8 years. He broke my arm, 3 ribs, my soul. And you know who protected him? His own boss. Because they were friends. Here, the law doesn't always protect." Roberta lowered her head. That truth hurt because it was also hers. "There's something else," Lucy said in a low voice. "Your mother-in-law came here 2 weeks ago. She asked me about poisons. She was wearing a wig. She didn't recognize me, but her voice, you don't forget that voice. She wanted something that wouldn't leave a trace." Roberta put her hand to her mouth. The world was spinning. Her mother-in-law, too. It was all a trap. She left there with her heart on fire. Not just because of the betrayal, but because she had been silent for too many years. Out of love, out of fear, out of habit. And that silence was costing her her life. That night, when she got home, she found Emma sitting on the sofa. She had the keys. Andrew had invited her to dinner without telling her. "Hello, darling," the woman said in her falsely sweet voice. "We didn't know you'd be late. Are you okay?" Roberta didn't answer. She just smiled. During dinner, Emma talked nonstop. She complained about the government, the traffic, organic food. Roberta listened to her in silence, each word another poison. She watched her serve her own plate, how she filled her son's glass, how she used that condescending tone that she knew so well. "Let's see if this time you buy something decent for the table. Not all of us were raised in the slums." Roberta gritted her teeth. She wanted to get up and scream, but she didn't because it wasn't time to explode. It was time to plan. And while Emma talked, while Andrew looked at her with his fake smile, while Matthias played with his food, Roberta understood something. The price of silence wasn't just pain, it was the slow death of the truth. And that truth was ready to scream. Roberta closed the bathroom door, leaned her back against the wood, and let out a held breath. Her body trembled with the force of what was contained. In the kitchen, Emma's voice still floated in the air like a soft poison. Stories of neighbors, complaints about young people, empty phrases dressed as courtesy. Andrew laughed at times. He seemed to enjoy having his mother at home, as if it were a validation of his world, as if masks were part of the nightly menu. The mirror in front of her reflected a tired face, but not a defeated one. She looked into her own eyes, searching for signs of the woman she used to be. There were traces, they were still there. Beneath the fear, the betrayal, the disgust, she was still alive, not intact, but alive. Dinner ended faster than usual. Roberta feigned a headache. Andrew didn't insist. Emma said goodbye with a cold kiss on the cheek. Matthias fell asleep on the sofa. She carried him to his bed. She kissed his forehead. The boy mumbled something in his sleep, a word she couldn't make out, something like basement or shadow. She made a mental note. Everything counted. Every fragment, every detail. That morning, while Andrew snored beside her, Roberta checked the jacket he had left hanging on the coat rack by the entrance. She was looking for the usual, papers, receipts, something to reveal his whereabouts. What she didn't expect to find was a USB drive in a small inner pocket hidden behind a poorly sewn seam. She went up to her room, turned on her old laptop, the one she only used for personal documents. She inserted the drive. Folders and names appeared, just dates, some from years ago, others recent. She started with the most recent, an audio recording. She recognized Andrew's voice. He was interrogating a man. It wasn't an official room. She could hear an echo and background noise. The interrogated man was screaming, asking for a lawyer. Andrew was telling him that lawyers don't come for traitors. Then a dry thud, another scream. More blows. Roberta gritted her teeth. She kept exploring. Another folder had videos, images recorded with hidden cameras in rooms, bedrooms, kitchens, living rooms. Most of the people didn't know they were being recorded. Some looked like protected witnesses, others were children. She felt nauseous not only from the content, but from the coldness with which everything was classified. As if someone had archived horror. She opened the last folder. The name made her blood run cold. Target RM. Inside, a PDF document. Her full name, date of birth, social security number, address. The file detailed her habits, routines, stress levels. At the end, a line. Emotional state favorable for induced suicide. Recommended to administer non-lethal doses over 4 to 6 weeks. The monitor blurred. Roberta felt her heart hammering in her throat. She closed the laptop. She hid it, went to the bathroom, and vomited. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees. Her mind raced. Everything fit. The coffee Andrew served her a month ago. The fainting spell, the strange taste in the food, the constant fatigue. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't stress. It was calculated. It was method. The morning arrived without her being able to sleep. She took Matthias to school, feigning normalcy. Then she went to the store. Lucy was waiting for her. Words were no longer necessary. A look was enough. "Come," the cashier said. "I have more to tell you today." They went into the small back room. Roberta closed the door carefully. Lucy took out a small box. She opened it. Inside, a collection of objects, letters, photos, notes, and something else. "Are these," she said, "from other women who came before you?" All of them were scared. All were married to men in uniform. One of them was a prosecutor, another a medical examiner. 2 are missing. One was found hanged in her kitchen. Her husband said she had depression, but I didn't believe him. Roberta took one of the letters. It was from a woman named Irene. She said her husband was slowly poisoning her, that she had discovered it, but had no way to prove it. She was asking for help. She signed with a drawing, a wilted flower. "Why are you helping me?" Roberta asked without looking at her. Lucy sat in front of her, crossing her hands. "Because you still want to live." The others had already given up. I saw them arrive with dead eyes. "You still have fire." "I'm not just a cashier," Lucy laughed. A sad laugh. "I'm not a witch, Roberta. I'm someone who has seen a lot of death. I recognize the eyes of someone who loves to kill slowly. Your husband is one of them. And I need to know more. Everything you can tell me, everything you see." Lucy nodded, closing the box. "But you have to hurry. He can feel it. They can feel it. When the prey starts to bite back, that's when they truly attack." Roberta left the store with her mind in turmoil. There were names, clues, buried stories, people who had disappeared under the shadow of men who wore uniforms on the outside but were monsters on the inside. That night, while Andrew was showering, she checked his things again. This time it was his phone. She discovered a hidden folder in a photo editing app. Inside, an old black and white picture from a high school party. Among the youthful faces, 2 stood out, Andrew and Sabrina. It wasn't a recent fling. Sabrina had been his girlfriend in high school, the same one Andrew had claimed to have lost contact with years ago. In another picture, they were hugging in front of a sign that said, Prom 2003. Roberta froze. He lied. He always lied. She wasn't a recent co-worker. She was someone who had come back for some bigger reason. Maybe she had never left. Later, she pretended to be asleep when he left the room at 2 in the morning. She heard the front door close carefully. She waited 20 minutes. She got up, went downstairs, and checked the car. Inside, in the glove compartment, she found a stained folder. Reports, photographs of women, medical reports. All with a neighboring county's seal and a name, Project Lazarus. Her head spun. Lazarus, a code, an undercover operation. Was that what they were doing? Eliminating women with dangerous information, creating fabricated suicides to cover up something bigger? She got back inside just in time. Andrew returned a few minutes later, went to bed, and fell asleep. He seemed calm. Roberta, on the other hand, felt the ground disappearing from under her feet. That night she dreamed of Lucy. She saw her standing in the middle of an empty road. She was telling her something she couldn't understand. When she woke up, the message was seared into her mind. She had to find Sabrina. She had to look her in the eye. She had to break the code. That morning, she asked for a day off from her precinct. She gave no explanations. She drove to the county where Sabrina worked. She pretended to be a reporter. She entered the building and asked for her. The receptionist told her she was in a specialization course. She asked where. The course didn't exist. She left the building with her heart in her throat. She started searching on social media. She found a lead. Sabrina had been seen at a gym near an industrial area. She went there. She pretended to be a new client. She walked among the machines. She saw her. She was training. She was sweating hard, focused, and alone. Roberta approached her. Sabrina. The woman looked up. It took her a second to recognize her. Oh, Roberta, I didn't expect to see you here. I want to talk for 5 minutes. I'm busy. I'm not asking. They went to an empty office. They locked themselves in. The air was thick. How long have you been with him? Roberta asked. Sabrina didn't answer. You were his high school girlfriend, and now you're back here again. What do you want? What are you doing? What is Project Lazarus? Sabrina pressed her lips together. She avoided eye contact. You don't know what you're getting into. I'm already in it. Then you should be afraid. No. You should be. I have proof, I have names, and now I have you. Sabrina fell silent. Then she looked down. He wasn't like this before. He changed. I lost him years ago. But he's got me trapped. If I leave, he'll find me. And if I talk, they'll erase me like they did the others. Who protects him? His mother-in-law, a retired judge, a commander, and people higher up. Tell me something I can use. Sabrina looked at her for the first time with compassion. He doesn't just want to kill you. He wants your son to see it. He wants to break you completely. Roberta felt the air leave her. She ran out. She didn't cry. Not yet. That night, she hugged Matthias tighter than ever. The boy was sleeping with a rapid breathing, as if he also knew, as if his soul was already on high alert. In the silence of the early morning, Roberta wrote a letter. If anyone finds this, know that I didn't give up, that I fought, that I died on my feet if I don't survive. May no one ever be silenced again. May no one ever believe that love justifies everything. She put the letter in the safe in the closet along with the USB. She turned off the light and knew, with a painful certainty, that the next day everything would change because now she had proof, and because she no longer intended to keep silent. Roberta woke up before the sun rose. The room was still shrouded in gloom with that thick air of the early morning when the body is still, but the mind screams. Andrew was sleeping deeply. Matthias was too. The house was silent, but she was no longer. She took her purse, her phone, the denim jacket she wore to go out unnoticed, and went down the stairs without a sound. Outside, the air was biting, the sky was gray, there was still no light, and the car's engine vibrated as if it also feared the journey she was about to begin. She had the address written on a napkin. Lucy had given it to her the night before after Roberta told her what she had discovered in the folder with her name as the target. The cashier didn't blink, she just told her a phrase that now echoed in her mind. If you want to know who Andrew is, start with the empty grave. She drove for more than an hour. She left the city, took rural roads, dirt roads where the signs disappeared, and the houses were further and further apart. The cemetery was on top of a hill, behind a small, abandoned church with doors sealed by time. There was no one, no priests, no candles, only gravestones cracked, worn by the weather and by secrets. She walked among them, reading names, years, dates, until she found it. There was the grave of Claudia Torres Mendez, Andrew's sister, dead in 2004, at 23 years old. Domestic accident, said the few official records that were still circulating. Roberta knelt in front of the gravestone. There were withered flowers and hardened dirt. She stayed silent. She wanted to feel something, but everything in her was confusion. She decided to look for the gravedigger. She walked towards a hut that looked like a maintenance shed. She knocked on the door. No one answered. She knocked again. After a few minutes, an old man with a white beard and watery eyes peered out. He smelled of old tobacco and liquor. Looking for something? He asked in a tired voice. The grave of Claudia Mendez, Roberta said, showing a fake credential from her county's police department. The case was reopened. I need information. The man watched her for a long moment, then opened the door completely and let her in. I dug that grave, I remember it well. It was in the winter of 2004. 2 men came. They weren't dressed like they were from a funeral home. They were cops. Roberta felt a chill. Cops? Yes. One was young and skinny, the other was older. They paid me in cash. They said we had to bury the coffin as soon as possible, that it was urgent. But when we lowered it, it weighed very little, and it had a strange smell, as if there was nothing inside. Roberta froze. Her heart was beating like a drum. What do you mean? The man sighed. He took a drink from a half-hidden bottle. That body was never buried. It was an empty coffin sealed with nails. They paid me double not to ask questions. I was young, I had debts. I kept quiet. And are you sure it was Andrew's sister? I didn't know the names back then. I just followed orders. But that gravestone was put in weeks later by someone else. There was never a wake. No one ever came to visit. No one ever cried here. Roberta felt the floor open under her feet. She looked at the grave one last time. It was a lie, like everything Andrew had built. She returned to the car without saying goodbye. Her hands were trembling. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her mind was racing. Who was Claudia really? And why would someone fake her death? Or worse, why pretend she was buried? She drove to the city and went straight to the county records office. She asked for Claudia's death certificate. The clerk at the counter looked at her strangely. That certificate is under judicial restriction, the woman said, checking the system. It can only be requested by a direct family member or by official order. Roberta pretended not to understand. She said thank you and left. She felt a pang of fury. They were hiding something bigger. Claudia wasn't dead. Or if she was, someone had wanted to hide it very carefully. She then decided to search the local newspaper archives. In 2004, there was an apartment fire downtown. A woman died in that fire. The article was short. It said the body was unrecognizable, but was identified by personal belongings. Roberta felt a dizzying sensation in her stomach. That body was officially of a woman with no clear identity. What if it was Claudia? What if the woman buried in that fire was her? And the empty coffin was just a smoke screen. Hours later, she used a special connection to enter a forensic database. She requested a cross-analysis of the DNA from that unsolved case with the data she had on Andrew. It was risky. They could trace her movements, but she didn't care. She needed the truth. The results came days later. A genetic match. The fire victim was Andrew's biological sister. The same Claudia who was supposedly buried on a hill more than 60 miles away. Roberta felt her throat close. Why do all that? Why a double death? What were they covering up? She returned home with a head ready to explode. Matthias was sleeping on the sofa. Andrew was in the kitchen pouring himself whiskey. Emma was sitting in front of the television, watching the news without paying attention. Roberta watched him from the doorway. Where were you? Andrew asked without looking at her. At the cemetery visiting your sister. Andrew froze. The glass stopped halfway. That was a long time ago. I don't know why you're doing that now. Because something doesn't add up. Her grave is empty, Andrew. He turned slowly. His face tensed. What are you implying? I'm stating a fact. Your sister was the woman in the fire. You killed her. Emma turned from the sofa. Her eyes were shining with tension. Oh, stop, she interrupted. Don't come stirring up the past with your delusions of a frustrated detective. Roberta ignored her. You killed her, Andrew. He didn't answer. He took a step forward. His voice came out hoarse. You have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, I do. I did something else. Your ex-wife. The first one, the one you said died in an accident, she was also murdered. And your DNA was on the remains. Emma stood up abruptly. Oh, stop, she screamed. You have no right to bring up those things. Those were different times. Roberta turned to her. You knew your son killed a woman before me? Emma was silent for a second. Then she crossed her arms defiantly. And what if he did? He just wants a quiet life. You got in his way just like she did. Roberta felt the air burn her lungs. You also knew he was poisoning me? Emma smiled. A dry, empty smile. I call it divine justice. Roberta approached her, looking her directly in the face. I'm not like the others. I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going to let you win. Andrew grabbed her arm tightly. Are you sure about that? She shoved him away. More sure than ever. She went up the stairs, closed her bedroom door, took a deep breath, and dialed a number on her cell phone. It was a colleague from a different county's forensic department. She asked for help, sent her the files, and explained the minimum. The colleague told her she would call as soon as she had results. Roberta knew there was no turning back. That night she slept little. She dreamed of fire, of screams, of graves opening. And when she woke up, she thought of only one thing. The truth had not only screamed. Now it wanted justice. Roberta woke up in the middle of the night, soaked in sweat, her heart beating against her chest like a war drum. For seconds she didn't know where she was. She had a dream, one she didn't want to remember. A fire, a scream from her son, a voice saying her name, but not with tenderness but with fury. She sat up in bed, gasping for air. The room was dark. Beside her, the bed was still empty. Andrew hadn't come back that night, or at least he hadn't gone to bed there. It was no longer a strange thing. What was once a suspicion was now a relief. She walked to Matthias's room and found him asleep, hugging his old stuffed animal, the blue patrol car. She carefully stroked his hair, swallowing the guilt that ran from her neck to her gut. She thought of everything he had seen, what he felt without being able to explain it. The tension that floated in the house like an invisible, dense cloud, loaded with things no one dared to name. She returned to her room, turned on her bedside lamp, and took out the notebook where she had been jotting everything down for days: facts, dates, words, signs. That night, she wrote a single sentence. "If I don't do something now, he will grow up believing that love is silence." She covered her mouth so her crying wouldn't be heard. Hours passed. The sun had barely risen when she decided to go out. She didn't care about how she looked. Tired, pale, worn out. She didn't want to hide it anymore. She got in the car and drove straight to the store. Lucy was waiting for her. She already knew. She seemed to feel Roberta's every step before she took it. She watched her enter with eyes that didn't judge, only understood. "Did you sleep at all?" Roberta shook her head. "I feel like if I close my eyes, someone is going to disappear. Either me or my son." Lucy poured her a coffee without saying a word. It wasn't the best coffee, but it was hot. And at that moment, that was enough. "What if I die before I do something?" Roberta asked without looking at her. Lucy put her cup on the table. Her hands trembled slightly. She had the kind of trembling that comes not from fear, but from having seen too many truths. "Then you'll be another martyr, but if you fight, you'll be a memory. And memories scare more than ghosts." Roberta finally looked at her. "I'm tired of being strong." "You're not strong, Roberta. You're wounded. But a wound is where the light enters if you don't cover it." She closed her eyes for a few seconds. The coffee burned her tongue, but she didn't let go of the cup. She had to make a plan. She could no longer depend on anyone else. That night, she returned home with a decision. She was going to end everything. Her way. She started by organizing documents. She recorded videos narrating each discovery. She uploaded everything to a secure cloud with a double password. She gave encrypted copies to 2 trusted contacts. She packed a suitcase with the bare minimum: clothes for Matthias, cash, an alternative phone. She did everything in silence, in secret, with hands that trembled inside but looked firm on the outside. That same night, Andrew didn't show up for dinner. Emma didn't either. Roberta didn't ask. Matthias ate dinner in his pajamas watching cartoons. He laughed softly. At times, he seemed to forget the tension. Roberta watched him from the kitchen. She wondered how many false memories that child would carry into adulthood. How many invisible wounds were being tattooed on him right now. She put him to bed early. She read him a story. It was about dragons. When she finished, Matthias looked at her half asleep. "We're going to be okay, Mom." She swallowed. Her voice barely came out. "Yes, my love. We're going to be okay." She kissed him on the forehead. She stayed sitting beside him for a while. And then she went to her room. It was then that everything broke. Hours later, when she woke up to check that everything was okay, she went back to the boys' room. But Matthias wasn't there. The bed was empty, the blanket was on the floor, his stuffed animal too. The world stopped. She ran through the house, calling his name. Nothing, not a sound. The back door was ajar. On his bed, she found something that wasn't there before. A piece of paper. "Don't rat on us, or you'll never see him again." She felt her chest break. It wasn't a threat, it was a declaration. They had taken him, and she knew it. It was Andrew, it was Emma, it was them. They knew she was about to talk, they knew she was preparing, and they hit her where it hurt the most. She collapsed to the floor. She screamed. She screamed with the fury of all the accumulated silences. She pounded the floor. She cried until she had no voice left, until there were no more tears. Only an emptiness, only a coldness that ran through her soul. She stayed like that for hours, motionless, thinking about everything she could have done before, about the times she backed down to avoid causing problems, about the times she preferred to believe a lie because it was more comfortable than facing the truth. When the sun began to rise, something inside her awakened. It wasn't hope, it was something else, darker, firmer. She got up, washed her face, changed her clothes, opened the safe, took her badge, took her gun, and dialed a number she hadn't dialed in years. "Maria?" Her voice was almost a whisper. "Roberta? My God, is that you? Are you okay?" "No, but I need you to listen to me just once, and I need you not to ask me anything until I'm finished." Maria, an old prosecutor friend from her county, was her training partner. One of those who knew the darkest secrets, one of those who had seen the abuses of the system from the inside and had learned to survive them. Roberta told her everything. From the cake in the store to the empty grave, from the recordings to the disappearance of her son. She didn't leave anything out. Maria didn't say a word until the end. Where are you now? At home, but not for long. I know they have him, and I know if I go alone, I won't come back. I need help. Official, legal, everything. I'll do everything I can. But if you're telling the truth, there are a lot of people high up involved. You have to be careful. I don't care about dying, but I want to take someone with me first. Give me 2 hours. She hung up, sat down, breathed, and waited. Meanwhile, she checked Andrew's messages. She had remote access to his account. He had forgotten to log out on an old tablet. There were no recent messages, but there was an archived one hidden among the drafts. The bitch is starting to dig. We'll have to move the kid before she talks, make it look like a common kidnapping. I'll cover the route. You, the basement. Don't leave any traces. The basement. She remembered a comment from Lucy weeks ago about a cabin on the outskirts where corrupt police officers met to train new recruits without supervision. She looked for the place. It was outside the jurisdiction in an area where the law didn't easily reach, and she knew Matthias was there. She got in the car, didn't wait for the 2 hours, she couldn't. She left Maria a note with the location in case she didn't come back. She drove nonstop. She crossed unpaved roads. She crossed dry rivers. The sky was overcast. It seemed everything had aligned for a storm. The cabin was old, made of rotten wood, surrounded by trees. It looked abandoned, but there were footprints, fresh footprints. Andrew's car wasn't there, but Sabrina's was. She approached cautiously. Armed, with her heart pounding, she pushed the door. She entered. The interior was dark, smelling of dampness and confinement. And then a noise, a whisper, a voice she knew. Mom! It was Matthias. He was tied to a chair in a corner. He had a blindfold on. His voice was trembling. I'm here, Roberta said, untying him with trembling hands. I'm scared. It's over. No one is going to touch you again. But they weren't finished. A figure appeared from the shadows. Sabrina with a gun. Don't take another step, she said. Roberta turned, pointing her gun at her too. Do you really want to do this? I have no choice. They have me too. If I don't finish this, they'll kill me. Then shoot. But the boy is coming with me. Sabrina hesitated. Her hand holding the gun trembled. He told me you would break, that you wouldn't be able to handle it. Well, he was wrong. A shot rang out. But it wasn't Roberta who fell. It was Sabrina. Lucy, with an old pistol, stood behind her. I said I'd come with you, Roberta whispered. She took Matthias in her arms, hugged him, kissed him, and knew that she had breathed for the first time in years. There was no turning back now because she was no longer just a mother. She was a woman with something that couldn't be extinguished. The will to burn down everything that had tried to kill her. That was what was beating in Roberta's chest as she looked at Matthias, sleeping soundly and safe in the next room. The boy was breathing with the calm that had been stolen from her years ago. For the first time after the hell of the cabin, after the shot that Lucy had fired with the precision of someone who had never forgotten what it meant to protect, Roberta didn't feel fear. She felt purpose, and that strength was more dangerous than any weapon. Lucy sat down beside her with the still-smoking pistol in a cardboard box, her eyes red and her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. You shouldn't feel calm, she said. Not after what happened. It's not over yet. Roberta looked at her seriously. I don't feel calm. I feel ready. On the table were papers, evidence, printed folders with the records of Project Lazarus, the hidden recordings from Andrew's phone, the medical reports of the traces of poisoning in her blood. The video where Emma said, with that coldness that only people who feel untouchable have, I call it divine justice. Lucy was recording everything, not as a reporter, not as a witness, but as a woman who understood that some things had to be documented for history. The evidence was already distributed in multiple secure locations, ready to be sent as soon as Roberta gave the signal. But Roberta didn't want it to end in silence. She wanted noise. She wanted justice to their faces. That's why she proposed what no one would have dared. A family reunion. A what? Lucy asked, incredulous. The Last Supper. Emma's birthday is in 3 days. She always has a gathering, and she always forces Andrew to bring me. This year, I'm going to organize it. Lucy blinked, taking it in. You want to sit at a table with all of them? After what they did? I'm not going to sit down like before. This time, they're going to listen to me, and they're going to fall one by one. The days passed like a ticking bomb. Roberta cooked. She decorated. She invited everyone who knew how to feign normalcy in the midst of hell. Andrew accepted the invitation with a suspicious smile. Emma requested her favorite dessert. Sabrina replied with a dry, I'll be there via a message from an unknown number. Lucy discreetly installed cameras in the house. She had a transmitter connected to an internal network used by agents from the 3 counties. Roberta was no longer an active officer, but she still had friends. Some wanted justice. Others just wanted to clean their hands before the scandal erupted. Everything was ready. On the morning of Emma's birthday, Roberta woke up before dawn. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. She put her hair up. She put on a blue blouse with a stiff collar, the one she used when she needed to appear stronger than she felt. She adjusted the pistol in the back of her pants. No one would notice it, but it was there, silent and lethal, just like her. Lucy arrived with fake flowers and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She sat in the darkest corner of the living room with a book in her hand and a hidden camera in her jacket. She pretended to read but recorded every second, every gesture, every look. Andrew was the first to arrive, dressed elegantly. He carried a bottle of wine and a measured smile. "You look different," he said when he saw her. "You look the same as always," she replied without emotion. Then Emma arrived with a cake that looked like it came from a magazine bakery. She entered as if she owned the house, as if nothing had happened, as if she had never uttered the words Roberta had recorded in her head. "He just wants a quiet life. You got in his way." Finally, Sabrina. Her hair was pulled back, her face was serious, and her gaze was evasive. She carried nothing in her hands, just a light jacket that hid more than it showed. The table was set. Roasted chicken, salads, freshly baked bread. Everything prepared by Roberta with surgical precision. She wanted them to eat well. She wanted them to be comfortable, because then the fire would come. Lunch began with empty small talk. "The weather is changing a lot this year," Emma commented, feigning interest. "It looks like it's going to rain," Andrew added, refilling his mother's glass. Sabrina didn't speak. She played with her fork. Roberta observed every second, every breath, every look between them. Then, in the middle of the silence, Roberta stood up. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced. Everyone raised their glasses, some with more enthusiasm than others. "Today we celebrate the birthday of a woman who for years believed I was an intruder, a threat, a shadow in her son's life. But today I want to thank you, Emma, because your words, your gestures, and your silence taught me something very valuable." Andrew frowned. Emma smiled condescendingly. "And what was that, darling?" "Not to trust anyone," Roberta said, pulling out the remote control that Lucy had given her before lunch. She pressed a button. The lights dimmed slightly. The television screen turned on. First image, Emma's voice clear and cruel. "I call it divine justice." Sabrina dropped her fork. Andrew stood up as if he had been shot. "What is this?" Roberta didn't look at him. Second image, the recording of Andrew talking on the phone with Sabrina. "The bitch is digging. We'll have to move the kid before she talks." Emma covered her mouth. Sabrina turned, looking for a way out. Roberta took out her gun and said, "No one is leaving." Andrew took a step forward. "What the hell are you doing?" "What I should have done years ago. I am broadcasting live on an internal police network. Every word, every image, already has your fingerprints, your emails, your lies. And they know that Matthias was found in a cabin rented in the name of a dead man you yourself registered as deceased 2 years ago." Sabrina moved quickly, pulling out her gun. Lucy stood up too. A second of tension, a shot. Sabrina fell to the floor. Her shoulder was bleeding. The gun flew through the air. Lucy stood with the gun still pointed. "I'm not a cop, but I'm a mother," she said. Andrew tried to run towards the back door. Roberta intercepted him. She pointed her gun directly at him. "This is what it feels like, Andrew. This is what it feels like when you know you can't escape." He raised his hands, but his face no longer pretended. It showed rage, contempt, fear. "She killed people too," he shouted, pointing at Roberta. "She pushed me to do it." "Oh no, Andrew," she replied firmly. "I just wanted to save myself." Sirens, voices pounding on the door. The police entered. Everything happened fast. Andrew was subdued. Sabrina was attended to by paramedics. Emma collapsed on the sofa, as if reality had just hit her all at once. Roberta stood still. Still armed, still whole. Lucy approached her. "You did it." Roberta didn't answer. She just breathed. Not with relief, but because for the first time in a long time, the air no longer hurt. The sirens were now just a backdrop, the masks had fallen. The house fell silent after the chaos. Sabrina's body was carried out on a stretcher, conscious but defeated. Andrew was handcuffed while he shouted threats that no longer scared anyone. Emma, motionless on the sofa, seemed to have aged 20 years in a matter of minutes. Roberta stood firm until the last uniformed officer closed the door. Then she fell to her knees. Not out of weakness. It was surrender, yes, but not to fear. It was the weight of the truth falling on her back. It was her body telling her she could cry, that she no longer had to resist every minute. Matthias ran down from the room where Lucy had hidden him for precaution. When he saw her on the floor, he threw himself into her arms. They hugged as if the world had suddenly become small, as if nothing else existed. Lucy watched them from a distance. She didn't say anything. She just walked over, rested a hand on Roberta's shoulder, and left. She knew her presence was no longer necessary. She knew that hug was the end of something and the beginning of everything. Weeks passed. The media had a field day. The scandal shook institutions. Headlines screamed. Police network covered up disappearances. An officer planned his wife's death. Women murdered under the protection of the law.